this is Robert at Blue Planet Surf Shop with the board meeting, and
I'm Evan from StandUpPaddleSurf.net, and today we're talking about vent plugs.
yeah. So just wanted to kind of explain a little bit. Most of the stand-up boards on the market nowadays have a self-venting plug, which means that it lets air in and out of the board, but not water. So basically it's
Is that Gore-Tex or what?
Yeah, so inside this thing is a little Gore-Tex membrane. So it's just like basically a real thin foil that lets air through, like it has small pores that let air through, but not water in. So, so basically the idea is that you don't have to do anything you don't mess with it.
But why don't we tell them why you would need a vent plug? It's because of the breathing of this type of board, right?
Right.
So you want me to explain or you can explain?
You explain it.
Oh! All right, so what happens is, these use EPS foam, which is that cooler foam that has kind of the beaded foam, and there's a lot of air in between that type of foam. So when the boards heat up in the sun, the air inside of it expands, and what happens is that can actually force the foam to separate from the epoxy on the outside, and that's what we call delamination. So if you ever see boards that have kind of almost like the outside skin is no longer stuck to the actual board, that's a delam, and it's because the board is constantly doing this kind of thing. When it gets hot, then it gets cold, it gets hot, it gets cold. So what the Gore-Tex plug is designed to do is to let the air out and the air back in without letting moisture out and in, so that you don't have that constant ballooning effect to create a delam, right? But there's a couple of things I think Robert wants to talk about in terms of care, since he makes boards and so on. He sees this a lot. So back to you.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, so like traditionally, a lot of boards had the screw-in vent plugs that you had to manually unscrew and then screw back in before you go in the water. So one of the issues was that people would forget, like they would unscrew it and then forget to screw it back tight again before they went back in the water. So then, like, the worst thing that can happen really is having water get into your vent plug. Like people go in the water without a vent plug, the thing gets waterlogged, and then it takes forever to get water back out. Water gets into the board quickly, but coming back out takes a long time.
Well, don't you have to like drill a hole on one of the ends and then try to drain it out if that happens?
That's one way to do it, but even that doesn't work that well. I mean, because if the water's in the board, like having a hole, I mean, that's just gravity. Like that's like the heavy water will drain out that way, but a lot of the moisture, like is vapor moisture or whatever.
That's going to be a question you're going to ask when you buy a board. Also, if it's used, right? You want to know if the thing's been waterlogged.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So an easy way to check it is just to feel how heavy the board is. If it feels, about right, then, I mean, or if you can find out what the new board weight is approximately. If the board weighs like 10 pounds more than that, then there's an issue. And it's like I said, it can be very hard to get all the moisture back out of the board.
No wonder it was discounted.
Yeah. So I mean, and that happens a lot. People don't realize how important it is to keep your board watertight. Like if you get a ding somewhere, you get water in it, you gotta let it dry out completely first, and then seal it off completely. You don't want to keep using a board that has a ding, even just a small crack or a pinhole.
How do you dry it out though? You don't leave it in the sun, right?
No,
I mean,
like putting it in a hot area, like in the attic, but not in the direct sun. It's
with the crack or whatever on the bottom or on the top?
Like at first you want to drain it out, so down, but then once it stops like draining, then it's actually the other way around, because then you want the water to evaporate the moisture. So you want to start with the thing draining downwards, and then afterwards you can turn it the other way around. So like if you had a ding on the deck, you would have it upside down till it finishes dripping. Then you can turn around and let the moisture evaporate. And that can take, it can take like a couple of weeks for all the moisture to evaporate out. So you don't want to seal it up too quickly, because then like a lot of times people are like, oh, I need it back within 2 days or whatever, a rush job. But then if you're just sealing the moisture in, then the repair is not done. I mean, you got to let it dry out, and so sometimes just
it's like
the
cancer.
drying,
you got to get the thing out.
Yeah, so drying the water out can take like 2 weeks. So that's why a lot of times the board repairs will take a while, And anyway, but basically the only time you want to take this thing out is if you do have like water in the board and you want it to dry out quicker. So then you can also remove that vent plug. And this is like a 5/8 wrench set that you just stick it on there, and that'll let you unscrew the vent plug out of the deck.
Otherwise, don't touch it, right?
Yeah, so generally speaking, you don't ever want to take out the self-venting plugs. They're self-venting, that's the whole idea. One of the things is if you do have moisture in the board, salt water, it'll try to vent out of the membrane, and the salt will get stuck on the inside of the membrane, and it'll basically prevent it from working correctly. Basically it'll plug up the pores in the membrane, and this one will no longer work. So if you do get water in the board and you use it for a while, and your membrane is stuck, you need to buy a new one. We sell these for like $20, and we have them on our website. So one of the few places where you can order them online. So we sell actually quite a few of these self-venting plugs. And yeah, like I said,
you sell the mount piece too, or just the plug?
Just the plug. I mean, actually, we do have the board mount too. So if you want to install one, retrofit and so on, we can do that too. But yeah, so basically, you want to make sure this works properly. So because once it gets plugged up, or also, if the membrane is compromised, sometimes they get like a scratch in it or something like that, then water can get in and out to the vent plug.
You don't want to mess
so
with
it's real
that.
important that you have a good vent plug in your board. So you don't want.
So what are some ways to tell if the thing is malfunctioning?
Well, if it doesn't vent, like if the pressure changes, it should bubble. Like if your board is like comes out of the water, you put it in the sun, it heats up, it should be bubbling. So if you put a little bit of water in this plug and there's water bubbling out of it, then that's a good sign.
Sweet. So if it was in the water, kind of cool, and then it comes out and it heats up, then bubbles will come out. That's what.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So and one thing is that when you go, like you take your board off your hot car and go in the water, the temperature drops, right?
Yeah.
So basically the board wants to suck in air, right? So if you have a ding, even just a pinhole, that pinhole within a few minutes can suck in a lot of water.
Remember what happened to my F-16 that time? You borrowed it? Was that you or is it Jeff? The orange one. It got hot on the car, and then the screw. It was a screw, because there was no vent.
Yeah.
And then
That's
put it.
why
Remember, you put it in the water, and then it went.
Yeah. I closed it bore I went in the water, and then in the water the thing
went
just kind of cracked. And the cracked on the rails.
So the board expanded on the car because it was super hot, and then there's no vent plug. It was just a screw to make it airtight, and then when you put it in the cold water, it went. That was kind of
cracked the rails, so that was a pain.
So then you break it, you buy it.
Yeah.
That's okay. That was a good board,
That's how
though.
I ended up with that board.
That's all right.
Yeah.
You wanted that board anyway, so that was good.
Yeah. Okay, so another thing is like, basically like a lot of boards have the stringer down the middle. So you have to make sure that it vents both sides. Basically, the stringer blocks air from one half of the foam to the other half of the foam. So sometimes you'll see waterlogged boards, and if they have a stringer in the middle and it's like clear, you can see like one side is all waterlogged and one side is normal, right? So because it sometimes turns brown or whatever. So sometimes if you have a ding on one side, you let the board get soaked with water. Like half of the board will be all waterlogged.
It's super noticeable when your board has a lot of water in it, because you pick it up and it's like, holy cow, this thing is super heavy.
Yeah. So and then what this one has, like basically 2 holes drilled in the base of this one way this way, one way that way. So that way it vents both sides of the foam blank, on either side of the stringer. So and then they have an O-ring here, this red O-ring. The rubber O-ring, that's what seals it. It's not the thread itself. Sometimes people try to put like Teflon tape or whatever in there to seal it, but it's the O-ring that makes the seal, not the thread, right? So it's important to have a good O-ring on here, and if you're not, you can actually lubricate a little bit with silicone grease too, and to make sure that the surface area inside the plug is clean, So
But your boards come with these vents, right? And most boards are coming with these
I'm
types of
talking
things
now
these
if you
days,
want to reinstall it or whatever.
okay.
You had an issue with it, you have to reinstall it.
Or easy way, just bring it in over here if you're in
Yeah.
Hawaii, and then fix it, and then that's easy.
So and then when you put it back in, you have to make sure the thread's going good, so you're not cross-threading it, So I would like get it started by hand and make sure you get the threads in there nice and even, and then you just tighten it back down with the socket wrench.
And how tight?
Make it tight. I would say hand tight. You're just pushing that rubber seal O-ring to make a nice seal. So you don't want to like make it too tight, because then you can actually twist the O-ring and stuff too.
Yeah.
So you want to make it nice and tight, and it should be watertight. And like I said, you can also, if you're not getting a good seal, you can put a little bit of silicone grease that'll help, like twist, seal it and tighter. But this is really important to have a good vent plug, and like occasionally, even a brand new vent plug can be faulty, So one way to test it is kind of just blowing into it, and it's basically, it should, like, if you can easily blow through it, that means it's compromised. It should, like, you blowing against it pretty hard, and it feels like you're blowing into a solid plug. So because it's very slow that the air comes through it. So if it feels like you can just blow through it, then that is compromised. So occasionally there'll be some that are compromised, and then that means water can get in. So if you have a board,
so you test all of those before you send them out of here, or what?
They do test them at the factory, so they're supposed to be perfect, but I would say maybe like probably less than 1% we'll see that where a new one is faulty, and
find out pretty quickly on that.
Yeah, and and a lot of times too, it's people messing around, like they take them out and then they check it or whatever, and they accidentally scratch it or whatever.
Dude, I'd never touch my plug.
Yeah, I wouldn't touch it,
Ever.
but we've had people come in with boards and it's like, oh, it's like on my car and I see water dripping out of the vent plug. So that's a bad sign. And then but then it can be either that the membrane is compromised or that you're just not getting a good seal on the O-ring. But if there's water coming out of your vent plug, that's a bad sign, and you gotta fix that right away. Let it dry out and then fix it. And yeah, so we sell these on our website. So if you have a bad vent plug, it's important to make sure you got a good seal on that one.
Okay. They're pretty much standard on all the boards out there, right?
No, there's
maybe
different,
the threading
there's
might be
different threads.
Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, I would say most boards have this.
Most boards are running this type
fine,
of Gore-Tex
fine thread
plug.
But some of them, like on the SIC boards, they use like a little bit longer one with a different kind of threading. So it's not always the same. And then also, like, I know some of the Riviera boards have like the really big ones.
Got to make sure
so
that
there's a few different ones available.
Threading.
Yeah. So, but this is definitely the most common one, those Gore vents. So, yeah. All right.
All right, sounds good. Thank you for teaching us on vent plugs today.
Thanks for watching.
Thank you for watching, and please subscribe down below. Please give us a thumbs up, and catch you next time on Board Meeting. Aloha.